Welcome to Human Rights Asia Weekly Roundup. In this week's program, Thai coup, army issues summons to activists, academics, politicians, and writers. Brutal police torture in Assam leads to amputated leg. Nepal brings Flow Truth and Reconciliation Commission Act. Pakistani media under attack from the military. Welcome to Human Rights Asia Weekly Roundup. I am Ansar Stianes. We start with the dramatic developments in Thailand, where General Prayut Chan-o-cha declared a military coup on May 22nd, a few days after restricting people's rights by imposing martial law on the country. Earlier, we spoke with a social activist from Thailand who has left the country because of security fears.
Before the coup d'etat on the 22nd May, there were protests led by the PDRCs, which are the conservative ultra-religious movement. They demanded that the caretaker government of Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra resign, and they want the so-called neutral person to lead the government, maybe an appointed Prime Minister to lead the government. But the government refused to do that because it's unconstitutional. The government has set up the election date, but the PDRC movement obstructed the election. They didn't want it to happen. So finally, there's a red shirt movement want to confront with the PDRCs. The red shirt movement wanted to have the election to let the people, the majority of the people in Thailand, to decide the future of the government. But the PDRC refused to do that, so the tensions increased. Finally, the military intervened. They said they were neutral. They want to mediate the conflict, but it was not true because the military is quite clear that they stand on the conservative, ultra-loyalist side. So the military, led by the army commander, set up a trap, telling both sides that he wants to mediate the conflict, invited all the parties to the meeting, and then arrested all people who came to the meeting. But the leaders of the Democrat Party and the PDRC so far have been released, while the red shirt leaders are still under arrest, under custody, and they have no access to the outside. So we don't know what's going on with them. I heard that one of them was physical abuse. This coup d'etat is related to the monarchy. It's about the succession issue. People know that the crown prince is the heir to the throne, a legitimate heir to the throne, but he's unpopular with the people, especially among the conservative elites. So I believe that the coup d'etat is aimed to change the law regarding the succession as well. Also, the conservative elites didn't want the crown prince to ascend to the throne because he believed that Thaksin Shinawatra, the former Thai party who is behind the red shirt movement, has a very strong influence over the crown prince. I left Thailand because it's quite clear that since the military seized power on 22nd, the violation of basic human rights has been widespread in the country. So far, over 200 people have been summoned. Of course, within these 200, they include the Democrat politicians and conservative elite. But these people, they will have no harm. It's just a window screen for the military to claim that they are neutral, but they are not. These people will be free very soon. But among these, over 200 people included academics and social activists who have been very vocal about the authoritarian regime and the monarchy issue. It's quite clear that the military is going to use military court to try this anti-military regime, especially those who involved in the movement demanding the amendment of the late majesty law. So if military court has been used, I believe that those people will not receive a due process of justice. About the late majesty law, or Article 112. This law prohibited people to make a comment, criticize of the members of the monarchy, actually for members of royal family. It imposed a severe punishment from 3 to 15 years for each account. And in the last few years, we saw that a number of people who were charged and prosecuted by this legislature increased very rapidly. This law creates fear among people. Even though they want to make comment, to criticize, they cannot do it.
In India, 25-year-old Baben Gogoi has undergone a leg amputation following torture by police. Baben works in Jorhat, Assam, as shopkeeper at a timber store. On April 6, he was tortured brutally by the police of Sinamora police station on the pretext of being drunk. The torture led to serious injuries to his right leg. His condition deteriorated during detention following the torture and was eventually admitted to the hospital. Doctors observed that, in addition to multiple fractures to the leg, the nerves inside the leg had been damaged and become compressed between the fractured bone splinters. The doctors were forced to advise Baben to have his leg amputated to avoid further infection. Baben's leg was amputated on April 23rd. On April 26, the family filed an FIR against Mayurjit Gogoi, the officer in charge of the Chinamora police station. No arrest has yet been made. Baben is the sole breadwinner of his family, as his father is physically challenged and unable to work. This incident of torture has brought irreversible financial, physical, and mental agony to Baben and his family. Earlier, we spoke to Baben about the brutalities committed against him.
ডিজিজত 1.5 লাখ মান গৈছে মেক্সিমাম হলো 10-15 দিনৰ ওপৰত থাকিব লাগিব মানে ইনফেকচনটো কি কম মই গোটেই সম্পূৰ্ণ ঘৰখনৰ মই জীৱিকা মানে অৰ্জন কৰা মই একমাত্ৰ হেৰি আছিলে তাৰ গোটেই ঘৰখনৰ মানে ক'ব মোৰ মানে ক'বলৈ একো ভাষাই আছে দেউতাৰ বিকলাংগ মায়েনো কি কৰিব দেউতা মা কাম বন কৰিব পৰা সুবিধা কৰিব পাৰিলে মই মনটো মানে অলপ বহুত হৈছে ঘৰখনত ব্যৱস্থা কৰিব পাৰিলে ভাল হয় দেহালৈকে মানে গোটেই এনেকুৱা প্ৰশাসনৰ বিষয়ে বিশেষকৈ বেয়া লাগে এনেকুৱা এটা ব্যৱহাৰ কৰিব নালাগিছিল হয়তো মানে এটা উপযুক্ত শাস্তি দিব লাগে যাতে মই সেইটোৱে শান্তি পাম বিভাগৰ ওপৰত এতিয়ালৈকে কোনো পদক্ষেপ গ্ৰহণ কৰা নাই কি কাৰণে মানে ইমান আৰক্ষী ইমান বৰগোটা বাঢ়ি গৈছে
The AHRC has been continuously reporting that the police in India often target the legs of victims, causing temporary or permanent disability. This kind of torture scars the victim for life, as apart from the physical memory and mental agony, it also leads to social stigma. Such brutality is also known to cause post-traumatic stress disorder and affliction that can last for life. Dr. Rajat Mitra, clinical psychologist, spoke to us about the psychological impact of torture by police leading to disability.
This person is at the moment devastated and would remain traumatized for a long time, maybe for the rest of his life. And what I'm shocked at is that the way the torture was done and the way the whole thing destroyed his ability to earn a living for himself and care for his family. And he seems to be braving it very courageously. And I really wish that there is additional help for him from the government to take care of him. The immediate is shock. The immediate, you don't realize that, what has happened to you. Immediately, the first reaction as I hear from him is that he's so helpless. It's after some time that probably that whole thing would start dawning upon him, when he finds that the day-to-day living has become much more difficult without a body part, that he could use freely earlier. That would be an additional trauma placed upon him. There are a wide variety of symptoms you see. I mean, and it could be nightmares, it could be hyperventilation, it could be withdrawal from society as such, it could be being hyper alert all the time, it could be a variety of symptoms. But it is not the symptoms that make the difference. It is the suffering that he undergoes inside every moment, and which he knows is never going to be ever filled up, because he has lost a body part, and that is not going to change. So I think apart from the symptoms that, yes, which are important from a medical point of view, what is also important is that the constant suffering that this person would go through, being dependent upon others for the rest of his life.
After repeated calls for passing the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, or TRC Act, in Nepal, the parliament passed the act on April 25th. The president approved it on May 11. However, the law violates the earlier interim constitution and the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, or CPA, of the Supreme Court of Nepal, which was passed in early January. The act also violates international laws. The TRC Act includes many flaws and has been watered down. The current act contains a vague language which fails to reject amnesty for serious human rights violations committed during the armed insurgency. Rather, it leaves the door open to the possibility of giving perpetrators amnesty. The AHRC condemns the government of Nepal for bringing such a flawed act and says this makes a mockery of the transitional justice process. This kind of act is not acceptable to the many conflict victims or to the national and international community. The AHRC further calls on the government to amend the TRC Act as per the Supreme Court directive and follow international laws. Earlier, we talked to Dinesh Tripathi, advocate at the Supreme Court and senior civil society member.
Look at the section 22 of the bill. It says that amnesty can be, reconciliation can be done, any crime. There is no negative list. Under the 55(4) of the bill, it says that the serious, violation of human right is only subject to a departmental action. Only that is unacceptable, because how come the serious violation of human right, which is a serious crime, how come it is only a subject of departmental actions? There has to be a full trial, and according to the law, according to the international norms, there has to be punishment. And then victim's consent is not necessary. It is not mandatory in the process of reconciliation. That has been totally diluted, and it violates the very notion of transitional justice, because the transitional justice process means it has to be fully victim-centric process. Without the consent of victim, no reconciliation can be done, no amnesty can be done, because they have the primacy in that process. They have to decide whether they want to forgive it or not.
Pakistani media and its working journalists are under attack from the security establishment. Pakistan's notorious intelligence agency, the ISI, is pushing the government to close down 3 of Geo Television's channels, including Geo News, the Geo Test, and the Geo Entertainment. The ISI decision comes after the failed attempt to kill Mr. Hamid Mir, a prominent Geo TV anchor personality who accused that ISI and its chief, General Zahir, of being behind the assassination attempt. Mr. Mir was hit by 6 bullets when he was going in his car from the airport to his workplace at the TV channel. The chief of ISI immediately pursued the Minister of Defense to file a case of tarnishing the image of the intelligence agency and demanded that Pakistan Electronic Media Regularity Authority, or PEMRA, cancels Geo's broadcast license for the 3 channels. After failing to get any result from PEMRA, the ISI organized street demonstrations against Geo TV. ISI also forced 5 private members out of the 12-member PEMRA to announce a ban on Geo and cancellation of its licenses of the 3 channels. The decision could not be implemented because of minority decision, and the ISI have now started agitating against the civilian government. More than 2,000 Geo employees all over the country will be affected if the channels were banned. Judicial commissions have uncovered evidence that many journalists have been killed and attacked by the ISI. That is all for this week's Human Rights Asia Weekly Roundup. For more information, log on to www.humanrights.asia. Thank you for watching and see you next week.